We're here today with Jack Endino. He's best known as the guitarist for the band Skin Yard. They've got a new box set out. It's called Skin Yard Select. Jack, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. First of all, can you tell the listeners a bit about Skin Yard in case maybe they missed you the first time around?
Well, that would be excusable because it was a minute ago, you know. Skin Yard was active from 1985 to 1992, and we made 5 studio albums in that time. And 3 of them were on the Cruise Records label, which was part of SST. So we had pretty good support. We toured a lot, went to Europe, you know, did the loop around the country several times. Went through a few drummers, you know, wrote a lot of songs, played a lot of shows, and, you know, it ran its course. This singer, Ben McMillan, ended up, after Skin Yard, he started a band called Grunt Truck and went on to a bit more mainstream success, if you will. He got a video on MTV. They were on the Roadrunner label for 2 albums. So in the meantime, I went on and just became a record producer. Our bass player, Daniel, ran CZ Records for years and years. And the various drummers we had in the band all went on to bigger bands. So, you know, there's stories.
Well, I know you've got the new box set coming out here, Skin Yard Select. What are we in store for here with the new box set?
Well, you know, Daniel, the bass player, you know, the 2 of us are kind of the keepers of the archive, really. I've got the tapes. He's the guy with the, you know, the label and the ideas, and he loves to find interesting graphics and art and so forth. That's kind of his department. So, you know, he wanted to do some kind of best of, some sort of compilation, and he hit on the idea of doing a box set of 7 inches, you know, just for the vinyl collectors, because vinyl's kind of become a thing again after being kind of not a thing during the 90s. And I think it's outselling CDs now. People are buying vinyl again, which is fairly gratifying. So we made, we picked 14 songs from like the history of the band, kind of chronological. And I pulled out the tapes and, you know, transferred them, digitized, cleaned them up a little bit, and laid it out as 7 inches, 14 songs. And Daniel found an artist named Mike Egan. I'm not sure how he finds people, but he does, who made some amazing art. So each of the 7 inches has its own slipcase with unique art, and it's in a box, which also has unique art. So it's a nice little package, full color. I signed off on, you know, my department is the audio part because I'm still a working producer engineer. So I signed off on the test pressings. I thought it sounded pretty darn good. So my job is done. And skinyardselect.com is where to go to get whatever information you need. I think there's pre-orders. So there you go.
Yeah, I did see it is a pretty limited run. You've got some rarities, unreleased tracks, and you mentioned skinyardselect.com. There's only, I think, 1,000 of these, so it's best for the fans
Correct.
to get out there and get them while they can.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, Daniel, it's the most ambitious packaging thing I think he's done, you know, and he's not running CZ Records full time anymore. You know, it's, you know, he puts out a record occasionally, but it's not really you know, it's not his main focus, but this was kind of a labor of love for him to make this package and make it happen. So I'm excited. It's going to be cool. We found a song. This is interesting. The first song on it is also the oldest one. It's got Matt Cameron on drums. And, of course, Matt, as you know, has done rather well for himself. But he was in our band for about a little over a year. And the first Skin Yard record is the first record that has Matt Cameron as the drummer. And his drumming is amazing, of course, even then. But we found a song that was recorded that Ben, our singer, only wrote and recorded half the lyrics for. And I thought, it's a pity. Well, you know, come to find out 30 years later, 40 years later, I realized the song was too long. So I chopped it down to fit the lyrics, and we had a nice little, 2 minutes and 40 seconds little rock tune that made perfect sense as a short song. So that's the first song on the package. It's called California, and it's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek.
Awesome. Yeah. Skin Yard really at the forefront of what I guess everyone would later know as grunge. Can you talk a bit about that and the scene in the early days at the time? I mean, did you guys know you were kind of creating this new genre?
I don't know, because Skinyard itself was never really, at the time, nobody associated us with grunge because, Ben was kind of a singer. He was a Bowie thing going on in the early days until he kind of found his own voice. And, the grunge thing was more about a kind of a punk rock vibe. So at the time, people didn't really associate us with the grunge thing. We were just another Seattle band. If anything, they thought we were a little bit more on the hard rock or metal side, maybe. Just not sure why, because our guitars were no louder than anybody else's, really. And I was recording all the other bands, of course. But in retrospect, our music fits right in with Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and everything else that was coming out of Seattle. You got sort of there was like a garage punk, end of the spectrum, and then there was kind of the more darker, metal riff rock end of the spectrum. And, like the Melvins were over there and Mudhoney was over on the punk rock side. But it was everyone considers it all just like, the Seattle grunge era music now, because we may have, everybody thought they were all different at the time, but, in retrospect, 40 years later, you go, yeah, there really was kind of a common thing happening here in the region back then. And I don't know if we all realized it. There was a regional sound, and I guess we were part of it.
Well, I know you wound up producing some pretty important albums, Nirvana's Bleach and, Soundgarden's first release. And, that sound you got was eventually copied by everyone and, it essentially kind of killed that slick, overproduced hair metal that was kind of dominating then. That's got to be an interesting feeling knowing that you had a big hand in kind of putting the final nail in that.
Well, I mean, I sympathize with those bands. They had careers, but it wasn't really what I was into. And it wasn't, the public spoke, basically. It wasn't a nefarious plan on the part of myself or anybody else here. It was just, the right music at the right time. I guess, Zeitgeist is how you might say it in German. It was just time for a different kind of rock and roll. And, it was the right music at the right time, and fortunately, I was making it sound good in the studio, so it was believable and came across in the recordings. So I'm glad I was able to do that. Contribute my part to it as an engineer and as a guitar player playing on stage with these bands.
Sure.
I was part of the scene. We played a lot of shows. We opened for Soundgarden all the time. Nirvana opened for Skinyard, I think, 4 times. And then the 5th time we opened for them. It's like, okay, that's how that works.
Well, what did you think when these bands you were playing alongside of suddenly took over the whole music landscape? I imagine that was not something you envisioned.
No, it was not on my bingo card, as you would say. I mean, it was definitely not something that I expected. I don't think anyone expected it. Nevermind comes out and it knocks Michael Jackson off the top of the album charts. I mean, who would have thought? But the thing to remember, though, is that it was kind of a build-up because prior to Nirvana coming out and just blowing everybody's mind, we already had several bands from the Northwest signed to major labels. We had Alice in Chains get signed. Screaming Trees were on a major label. Mother Love Bone had done their thing unsuccessfully, and then Pearl Jam got signed, and their record was coming out. Soundgarden already had I think they were on their second major label record right around the time that Nevermind came out. So, there was a lot of, I think Mudhoney was already talking to a major label. There was a lot of stuff, something was happening in Seattle already. An unusual amount of bands were getting onto the charts right around that time. And then, Nirvana came out and just like blew everybody's mind. And then it was on big time. So, it was an interesting time. I certainly never imagined I would live through something quite that strange and interesting. And the fact that I knew a lot of these bands personally and had worked with them.
Well, Jack, I know you released some solo stuff and you've worked with other bands over the years. Could you see a scenario where maybe you and Daniel House or, somebody else would maybe release new music as Skinyard? Could we see that happen?
I don't know. And the reason is we lost our singer, Ben McMillan, in 2008. It was kidney failure. It was he had some serious medical problems, actually. And, You know, it's pretty hard to replace a voice like that. You know, Daniel and I have talked about it, but it just doesn't feel good. You know, trying to do something and call it Skinyard if Ben is not the singer. So I think we're kind of stuck there. We've sort of joined the There Will Be No Band Reunions Club along with the Screaming Trees and Soundgarden, and Nirvana for that matter. You know, we don't have a lead singer, so the best we can do is the archival kind of thing, like is what we've just done. And the Skinyard box set has some stuff that was never on vinyl before, so that's kind of fun. There's a few more rarities, and I remixed a couple of songs too, just because I can. I look back at things I did in 40 or 35 years ago, and I think, well, I was an engineer for 2 years at that point. Now I've been doing it for another 35 years, and maybe I'm a little bit better at it. So that's some things that I took a few liberties with to sort of make them sound better, and I'm just going to say better, and it will be obvious. But I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, I just don't see. Nobody's going to sing like Ben McMillan, and nobody's going to sing like Mark Lanigan, and nobody's going to sing like Kurt, and who the heck is going to sing like Chris Cornell? What are you going to do? We had some great singers in this town. Yeah,
that is sad that when you start listing them off like that, I guess you don't really realize that those bands that became so important, a lot of them are gone now, and it was relatively quickly, I think, in the grand scheme of things. It's definitely too bad how things worked out.
It is. And, another great singer from these parts was Mia Zapata from the Gits. And I just got finished remastering the entire Gits catalog for Sub Pop. They're going to reissue the whole thing. And, there's another singer we lost, and that stuff is amazing. And I just got done remixing the first 3 albums by The Fluid, which was another band that was on Sub Pop in the grunge era. Fortunately, they're still alive, most of them, 4 out of the 5, including the singer. And so who knows what those guys will do, but that was pretty satisfying. That's going to get reissued as well. So, people are looking back on some of this music that was made and kind of going, yeah, there was a lot of good stuff that came out. Some of it is not as well known as it should be, but that's how it is. Most of the time, there's always stuff that slips through the cracks.
Well, it's great that this new set here coming out again, Skinyard Select, and Jack, I know it sounds like you're still keeping pretty busy. Is there anything else maybe you're working on now, or another project we should be watching out for?
Well, let's see. I was just mixing a song for the Gits. A live song that they're using in a video this morning. Wow, I'm probably going to forget. I'm probably going to totally forget whatever I've been working on for like the last week. Let's see, the Fluid albums, the Gits. There's a band called Image that I finally put together an unreleased album for that never got a record out while they were around. That should come out eventually. Another Seattle band. Kind of blanking. I just transferred an old tape for Jerry Miller, who's the guitar player from Moby Grape, who lived here. He just passed away in July. And, so I just never know what's going to land in my lap, really.
Excellent. Well, Jack, it's been an honor speaking with you. I'm excited here for Skinyard Select, and it's great that you're keeping busy, and hopefully we can speak again sometime. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate your being interested and being willing to do the interview. Thanks for getting in touch and, carry on.
Again, that was Jack Endino from Skinyard, and their new box set, Skinyard Select, is out now. You can get that at skinyardselect.com.